What's going on, Tamers? It's me, your favorite Digi-Policeman East, and today we're taking a look at the third week of the BT14 Blast Ace meta over here in Japan and the rest of Asia. A couple things that are happening. So the EVO Cups are still happening over here in Asia, and as a result of this high level of competition, the meta is moving pretty quickly. We're also seeing some new cards from Blast Ace being introduced into older decks to breathe life back into them, as well as some aggressive picks that we haven't seen for a bit start to get a bit more shine. So with all that in mind, let's take a look at some event results, a few key takeaways, as well as a close look at some of the decks that topped over the course of the week. So as we hop into our results, first off, you're going to notice Shine Greymon back at the top of its game. The addition of the new Patamon cards as well as vaccine support really does wonders for this deck. People started adding in cards like Messenger of Hope, and then using the Patamon from Raise, you can Digivolve from your security into a Yugioh Greymon and get a free Tamer out very, very quickly. Right below that, we're going to see Mirage Galgamon on its heels. Again, Mirage Galgamon has got access to the new Gomamon cards as well as the new Zudomon support card. Zudomon Ace, I think at this point we can pretty confidently say is probably the best Ace card released in Blast Ace, the BT14 set as a whole. Being able to source strip and then just remove anything that doesn't have a source is very, very strong. And then as we move down to the champion level here, we see a nice healthy mix of older decks and new decks performing quite well. War Greymon, with as many build options as it has, is really hard for the deck to just be bad. Patamon and the vaccine deck are becoming a little bit problematic. Some people are still running Seraphimon, but I think a lot of people are more skewing the deck towards a controlled focus, and so things like Ruin Mode are going to be really important. So if you don't have any Ruin Modes, definitely get your hands on those now, because 2 or 3 copies is going to be a nice include for the deck, as well as things like Death Xmon. We talked before in the past about Fenrir Lugamon and how they have 2 builds in parallel happening right now. The first build focuses on discarding cards from hand, whereas the second build focuses on discarding cards or milling cards off the top of your deck. And because this deck needs to set up trash so quickly, I think the mill variant is starting to win out. The deck is including lots of things like Miss Memory Boost, as well as other cards to trash cards off the top of your deck so they can build those level 4s in the trash, or to get those much needed Lugamon pieces there so they can use them later on. Also, I feel like I have to keep telling people this, but Blue Flare is a good deck, please believe me. If you want to pick a deck that's going to hold value over the course of a couple of sets, Blue Flare is a great pick. Add in a couple of cards per set and it's still tier 1, tier 2, very, very strong. In Blast Ace, you can add in a couple of Zudomon Aces here to take advantage of the fact that the deck has lots of level 4s, and then every level 4 you have on the board just becomes a threat for an Ace to remove something on your opponent's side. Also, speaking of decks that hold value really, really well, it's one that I don't talk about very often, but Green Bloom Quartz is still really good. I actually had this conversation with a guy who was visiting from overseas in my local card shop yesterday. If you want a great deck that's going to hold value for a long time, Bloom Quartz is so good. Also, take into account that most of the pieces in this deck are pretty cheap. You can build this deck without breaking the bank, no problem. And as we continue down the rookie level here, Metal Garurumon is a deck that's got a little bit of life breathed into it as a result of the new Pokemon Digi-Egg card that got released in Blast Ace. Pokemon giving your Digimon jamming and inheritance is actually very strong, considering Metal Garurumon can make so many swings over the course of a single turn that the deck has seen a little bit of a resurgence. We also see things like Setcon as well as Crossheart. Crossheart actually won a couple of Evolution Cups this past week, and we're going to take a look at one of the lists. It doesn't really get much new support, but I feel like the deck has been around for so long that it's been just refined to a great degree. We also see Billzamon holding on despite its nerf, and unfortunately the worst performing new deck right now of like the top contenders, I'd say, is Digipolice and the D-Brigade deck. I'm playing this deck at locals, and it feels like people are starting to tech in cards and also run archetypes that are just not great matchups for the Digipolice. Things like Ruin Mode, Death Xmon, things like Kongo, as well as Sorai are all problematic for this deck, and as a result, we see it slide down the results list a bit here. And to close out the rookie level, old staples like Hunters as well as Royal Knights. And this week's in-training level, a bit wilder than I've seen before. Alphamon's still very strong, I think he deserves a spot there. Belphamon as well. But things like Gamamon, which haven't seen the new support cards yet from the Digimon card game tour that's happening in Japan. Grandis is still sticking around despite it getting heavily nerfed. Things like mill out decks with Megadoramon and Lilithmon, as well as Kazuchimon, Titamon, and Tyrannamon. And then rounding out the list with Ulforce Vidramon. So the first list we're going to take a close look at is going to be the Patamon vaccine deck I talked about before. Again, really great results. This deck is kind of becoming a menace with all the cheap Digivolves it gets. Again, Patamon here being able to Digivolve from your security is really, really powerful at the beginning of your main phase, which means you can Digivolve into something like a Yugioh Greymon to get a free Tamer on the board, or if your opponent has some threats out there, you can go into the Rapidmon, which is a cute little tech here. Go into the Rapidmon to spin something and then give it minus 5k and then swing into it potentially. This deck also has lots of different forms of removal. Things like the Breath of Wyvern card to give something minus 15k, which will take out almost anything in the game at this point. And then if you do run up against the rare Mugindramon or Chaosdramon deck, then you have your Angemon to just remove those off the board entirely. And then of course Angemon, or Holy Angemon Ace here being able to give something minus a couple thousand DP to potentially make it die in a security swing is always there. Also, a couple of floodgates, things like Patamon, which hasn't seen a bunch of use in the past, but it's probably going to get more popular as time goes on, as well as things like Cutamon, which has seen a ton of use, and with the addition of the training cards, it's probably going to see more use. Something that surprises me about this build is that they only include one copy of Messenger of Hope here, where this card is basically a one-cost Digivolve from your security into anything. This guy, I guess, only needed one copy of it in the deck because Patamon does the job to level 4s, and then I guess maybe you can go from the 4 to level 5 on a counter blast using the Holy Angemon Ace, and then I guess you can use this on the level 6. Actually, speaking of the top end, very annoying level 6s and level 7s for this deck. Things like Seraphimon to heal and also get security attack plus. Things like Venusmon here to stall your opponent and stop their own attack and when evolving effects from going off. And then the top end here is just disgusting. The 1-of Death Xmon here as a basic staple for any deck at this point in the game. And then the 3 copies of Ruin Mode, which honestly, if you're running a really aggressive deck, is going to just ruin your day. So all in all, a pretty solid and powerful Patamon list here. And because this deck did win an Evolution Cup, it's already been put through its trials. Our next deck is going to be the Tax Wolf himself, Mirage Galgamon, and Blastace has definitely updated this deck a lot. We see just at the level 2s here at the Digi-Eggs, 4 copies of Pukamon, giving your Digimon jamming, which means you can put out those level 3s and level 4s, have them swing without having to worry about them being destroyed from security, and then have them stick around for another turn so you can go into level 5, 6, and 7s very quickly. It's a little hard to see here, but we have the BT12 Mirage Galgamon, the one that searches out, as well as a couple copies of the EX4 one, and then a couple inclusions of the new Gomamon. Gomamon is nice because usually in blue, when your board gets wiped, you don't have anything. You basically can't attack the following turn. And so with Gomamon in this deck now, if your board does get wiped, your Gomamon can come back, and then you can start to Digivolve off that and make an attack the next turn. Another really easy way this deck does get Gomamon out is by using the Ranamon here, being able to Digivolve off of a Tamer and then slot in a Gomamon underneath it so that the Gomamon just comes back whenever the Ranamon is destroyed anyway. And then as we move on to level 5, you see they're only running one variant of the Maha Galgamon here, being the EX4 one that bounces level 4s back to your opponent's hand. The other level 5s in this deck are the Zudomon Ace cards. You can be able to Source Strip. Also, a very cute little tech in this deck is the inclusion of the BT4 Mirage Galgamon. Now, you're probably wondering, why would you want to run this guy? He gives like a similar effect to the Mirage Galgamon that's more updated, I think, in BT12. However, he does have the nice little caveat of being unblockable. And in the case of something like Digipolice or D-Brigade, which can put out like 7 blockers right before they kill you, this Mirage Galgamon is your answer to still take the game. Kind of surprising here, the removal for this deck is actually going to be the Full Moon Meteor Impacts, which are a great removal card, especially in a deck that enforces your opponent to draw lots of cards like Mirage Galgamon does, being able to reduce his cost after it's played. If, on the other hand, you are worried about something like Royal Knights or Digipolice, maybe it might be worth including a couple copies of Sorai instead. You also get the nice combo ability off of your Gomamon and Zudomon Ace here with the Sorai, so that's always thought as well. And so with this deck winning Evolution Cup as well, if you're looking for a strong Mirage Galgamon deck list out there, look no further. And the last list we're going to take a look at today is going to be the Crossheart deck that I alluded to before. Now, Crossheart, while it doesn't get any new support, it has gotten very, very refined, and we see that in this list here. We see the bottom end of this deck pretty similar to what we've seen before. Again, the Shoutmon, the Dorudumon, the Ballistamon, the Starmon, and the Sparrowmon. And then as we move on to the deck, some neat little texts are starting to appear. So of course, as always, because we're running X7, we're going to run a couple copies of the G-Greymon as well as the Omega Shoutmon here. And if you look at the Tamers, things go super left field. So lots of Taiki Tamers, specifically mostly Taiki Tamers, even the one included in the Hunter's deck, so you can cycle cards very, very quickly at the start of your turn, as well as the inclusion of the Kiriha and Nene. This deck doesn't run too many Blue Flare cards, however, the X7 does count as a Blue Flare card, which means whenever you Digicross him, you can use the Kiriha Nene Tamer and Digicross from the trash as well. Going back to the Taiki Tamer here for just a minute, you see as you look at the last row here, a couple of the Hunter cards, things like the 2Armon, which is very good because Digivolve right now is such a strong mechanic, as well as a couple of the Shoutmon King versions to play Tamers down for free. The top end for this deck looks pretty similar to what we've seen before, just lots of the Shoutmon X3s, X4s, X5s, and X7s. And then they have the one copy of the Shoutmon X7 Superior Mode here, and if you take into account all of the cards in this deck, I believe you can get his cost down to 1. So, very, very powerful indeed. Anyways, folks, that's going to wrap it up for the third week of the BT14 Blast Ace meta over here in Japan and the rest of Asia. Lots of cool things happening. I like the fact that we have old decks like Crossheart and things like Metal Garurumon making a comeback, as well as lots of new decks and things like Fenrir Lugamon, Digipolice, as well as lots of really cool archetypes getting mixed together with some old cards like War Greymon and Shine Greymon. And then on top of all that, next week we're going to have the new Ghost Game cards introduced into the card pool from the Digimon Card Game Tour that's happening over here. And I personally am super excited for the Amphimon as well as the Gamamon support that's coming out. Anyways, folks, I'm going to get out of here. Before you get out of here, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.